the 3 moments that almost destroy every empath, and how Carl Jung says you survive them. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving into the 3 moments that almost break every empath. The moments that shake your identity, test your boundaries, and push your heart to the edge. But more importantly, we'll explore how Carl Jung's teachings reveal the exact inner strengths that help you survive, rise, and transform through them. As you listen, reflect on your own journey. Which of these moments have you faced, and what did they teach you about yourself? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be the light someone else needs today. The first deadly moment, the recognition of non-reciprocity. The first deadly moment in an empath's life is the recognition of non-reciprocity. That piercing instant when you finally see with painful clarity that the warmth, gentleness, and emotional depth you offer so naturally are not being returned in the same way. And this realization almost destroys you because it collapses the quiet illusion that others feel relationships as deeply as you do, exposes how many of your bonds have been quietly one-sided, and forces you into a kind of inner exile that feels like psychological aloneness. It is in this raw place that so many empaths begin blaming themselves, wondering if they were too intense, too sensitive, too available, or too loving, while others swing toward cynicism, convincing themselves that real closeness does not exist. But beneath all of this emotional turbulence lies a spiritual truth that Carl Jung insisted on confronting. You are not actually seeing the person, you are seeing the projection of your own empathy reflected back at you. And it is this projection that creates the illusion of reciprocity. When the projection breaks, the truth appears, and it is this unveiling that feels like heartbreak. Yet Jung's survival protocol, conscious discrimination, exists precisely for this moment. It is a discipline of clarity, a willingness to observe people as they are, rather than as your heart hopes they might become. And this clarity becomes the foundation of your spiritual awakening, because it teaches you that empathy is not a universal language. It is a rare dialect, spoken fluently only by a few. Conscious discrimination asks you to stop pouring your emotional energy into relationships that do not, cannot, or will not reciprocate, because continuing to give deeply in desert soil will only lead you to spiritual exhaustion. This is why Jung's wisdom echoes through the metaphor, "Don't plant orchids in desert soil." A reminder that even the most precious seeds cannot bloom where the environment itself rejects nourishment. To practice this, you must begin noticing subtler forms of reciprocity, the way someone listens when you speak, whether they initiate connection or only respond when needed, whether they show care without being prompted, whether they repair after conflict or simply wait for you to fix everything. These tiny behavioral patterns hold spiritual wisdom because they reveal the architecture of a person's emotional world. When you stop projecting your empathy onto others, these patterns become easier to see. And with each act of seeing, you reclaim a piece of the power you once surrendered to imbalance. This moment of recognition is devastating, not because others are unkind, but because you finally witness the truth without the cushioning of illusion. It forces you to realize that your emotional generosity cannot transform someone who is unwilling to meet you at your depth. But rather than hardening your heart, conscious discrimination refines it. It teaches you that spirituality is not passive softness. It is disciplined awareness, a grounded understanding of where your energy flows and where it drains. It shows you that spiritual awakening is not only about transcendent experiences. Sometimes it is about identifying the subtle dynamics that quietly shape your emotional life and learning how to navigate them with maturity and grace. As you move through this recognition, the grief that rises is not a sign of personal failure. It is the release of an outdated narrative that once governed your relationships. The sadness belongs not to the truth itself, but to the years you spent believing that your empathy alone could sustain connection. In this grief, you begin to realign your boundaries. You learn to draw a sacred circle around your emotional energy and to protect it not with walls, but with discernment. You begin to understand that the right relationships will not need to be rescued, revived, or restructured. They will breathe on their own. When this clarity takes root, your internal world begins to shift. You stop being magnetized toward emotional desserts and start gravitating toward environments where mutuality exists naturally. You recognize that intimacy is not created through effort alone, but through resonance. You finally understand that your empathy is a gift, but only when offered to people who can receive it without draining you. And slowly, quietly, powerfully, the moment that once felt like destruction becomes the threshold of transformation, guiding you toward relationships where your heart is not a burden, but a match, and your depth is not a risk, but a home. Have you ever realized you were giving your heart to people who could never truly meet you halfway? If so, share your experience in the comments below so others can learn from your journey. And if you're just beginning to awaken to this truth, type, "I see it now." Let this be your moment of clarity and strength. The second deadly moment: dissolution of self through accommodation. You arrive at the second deadly moment, the dissolution of self through accommodation, when you suddenly become aware that you have been shape-shifting for so long that your own inner voice has faded into the background. And every time you adjusted yourself to keep the peace, meet expectations, or carry emotional weight for others, another piece of your true identity sank beneath the surface until one day someone asks you, "What do you want?" And the question lands like a shock because the honest answer feels blurry, frightening, and painfully unclear. This moment almost destroys empaths because you built not one identity, but many, each one carefully molded to avoid conflict or disappointment. And while these personas helped you survive, they also pulled you further away from your center, burying your real preferences, burying your real needs, and burying the self that once felt natural. Then, when the exhaustion becomes unbearable, your instincts often push you toward a sudden rebellion, a dramatic swing to the opposite extreme, where you try to reclaim yourself by rejecting everything and everyone at once. But this opposite persona is just another mask, another overcorrection, anher counterfeit version of you. Carl Jung's survival protocol interrupts this collapse with something steady, grounded, and deeply connected to spirituality and spiritual development: active imagination for self-recovery. A practice where you stop shape-shifting long enough to ask yourself real questions and give space for the authentic answer to rise. You sit with yourself without trying to perform, impress, or say what sounds reasonable. Instead, you wait for the quiet voice beneath the noise of habit and obligation. You start small, asking what kind of morning rhythm feels natural, which people energize you, what pace your body prefers, what foods you actually enjoy, and you treat these answers as a rediscovery rather than a luxury. This process teaches you the essential skill that every empath must learn to survive. Letting people feel disappointed without rushing in to fix their discomfort. Disappointment is not danger. Disappointment is not a failure of kindness. Disappointment is simply proof that you are no longer abandoning yourself to keep the world smooth. From here, you rebuild your identity slowly, preference by preference, boundary by boundary, because the real self doesn't return in a single breakthrough moment. It returns through small choices that honor your values and match your energy. You speak to yourself as if guiding a friend. You are allowed to rest without reasons. You are allowed to say no without guilt. You are allowed to stop carrying what doesn't belong to you. And each sentence becomes a thread that pulls you back to center. Along the way, guilt will try to disguise itself as goodness, telling you that you are selfish for choosing yourself. But if you look closer, you will see that guilt appears only when you stop performing the role others benefited from, not when you do something wrong. That realization marks the beginning of inner healing, because now you respond not with rebellion, but with clarity, replacing overreactions with calm boundaries like, "I'm not available for that," and letting the sentence stand without explanation. When confusion arises, you anchor yourself to tiny, doable steps. 1. Honest no. This week, 1 conversation you exit when your body tightens. 1 evening you protect for quiet. And as you repeat these choices, your center grows stronger. You begin to recognize which roles require self-betrayal and slowly let them go. You learn to measure your progress by congruence instead of approval, noticing when your words, actions, and inner signals finally match. Through this slow, steady rebuilding, you transform the dissolution of self from a breaking point into a turning point, reclaiming the identity you lost through years of over-accommodation and stepping back into a life shaped not by expectation, but by truth. If this second deadly moment resonates with you, declare your strength in the comments below. Write, "I honor my true self, and I choose to stay whole." Your words may inspire another empath who needs this reminder today. The third deadly moment, the recognition of fundamental aloneness. The third deadly moment comes when you finally awaken to the haunting realization that no one will ever completely understand your inner world. No matter how close, loving, or intuitive another person may be, there will always remain an unbridgeable distance between your soul and theirs. For empaths, this truth strikes like lightning. It shatters the lifelong dream of perfect mutual understanding. You've likely built your relationships on the hope that someone could mirror your emotions, read your silences, and grasp your heart's language without you needing to explain. When you discover that such total connection is impossible, it can trigger a wave of existential despair so deep it threatens to pull you under. Many empaths respond by withdrawing, closing their hearts, and convincing themselves that it's safer not to feel at all. Carl Jung, whose spiritual wisdom continues to illuminate the depths of human experience, offered a path through this darkness. Accept the paradox. You are fundamentally alone, and yet meaningful connection is still possible. This isn't resignation, it's liberation. The moment you stop demanding perfect understanding from others, you begin to appreciate the beauty of partial understanding. You realize that love doesn't need to be flawless to be real. Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." With this truth, you see that your loneliness isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to deepen your relationship with yourself. From here begins the sacred art of self-companionship. Instead of craving constant validation, you start nurturing your own inner dialogue, learning to be good company to yourself. You speak to your heart gently, listen to your thoughts without judgment, and offer compassion where there was once self-criticism. This inner friendship becomes a source of stability that no external relationship can replace. As you fill your inner world with understanding and care, your outer connections begin to change. You no longer reach out from emptiness, but from fullness. You no longer demand that others rescue you from isolation. Instead, you meet them as equals, offering presence instead of need. In time, you see the miracle. Even though no one can completely know you, they can still meet you where it matters. A look, a word, a shared silence, these small bridges of connection become sacred. You stop measuring love by how perfectly it reflects you and begin to value how sincerely it touches you. And through this acceptance, your relationships deepen. You love without illusion. You listen without expectation. And you give without fear of being misunderstood. Jung taught that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In embracing your aloneness, you discover that authenticity is the key to real connection. It's not about finding someone who fully understands you. It's about learning to live truthfully within yourself and bringing that truth to others. So when that crushing awareness comes that no one will ever fully know your soul, remember that it's not the end, but the beginning of real spiritual awakening. It's the moment your empathy matures into wisdom. It's the point where you stop looking for mirrors and start becoming light. And in that luminous self-acceptance, you finally understand what Carl Jung meant, that our task is not to escape solitude, but to find God, truth, and peace within it, and then share that peace, imperfectly but beautifully, with the world. If this moment spoke to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Tell us how you faced your own fundamental aloneness, and let's continue growing together on this journey of spiritual wisdom. 4. What happens when an empath survives all 3 moments? When an empath survives all 3 breaking points, the moment they stop rescuing people who refuse to rise, the moment they stop dissolving themselves to keep everyone else calm, and the moment they face the loneliness that comes after finally setting boundaries, they do not become colder, they become clearer. And this clarity is the foundation of spirituality and spiritual awakening. The inner shift where emotional overwhelm turns into emotional intelligence. Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And surviving these thresholds makes you conscious in a way you have never been before, shaping what he calls a tempered empathy that is soft but not porous, compassionate but not self-destructive, loving but never blind. This tempered empathy rests first on discernment, the ability to know who can truly reciprocate. You begin to sense the difference between someone who is hurting and someone who is harmful, between someone who needs support and someone who drains you because it is their pattern, not their moment. You start watching actions instead of promises, effort instead of excuses, repair instead of emotional theatrics. You learn that reciprocity is not about perfection, but about willingness. Do they show up? Do they try? Do they take responsibility? Discernment becomes the inner filter that protects your heart from becoming a free emotional service station for those who thrive on taking without returning. This is not coldness, it is stewardship, the wisdom of tending your emotional garden with a gate instead of leaving it open to anyone who wanders by. From that clarity grows authentic selfhood, the end of shapeshifting. You stop twisting yourself into whatever form keeps the peace. You stop swallowing your truth so others won't feel uncomfortable. You stop performing softness just to be acceptable. Instead, you reclaim your preferences, your boundaries, your voice. Your yes becomes intentional. Your no becomes clean. And your presence gains weight because you are no longer bending to match the room. People trust you more because you are solid. Your energy stops flickering between versions of yourself and begins to stabilize into who you actually are. The masks you wore to survive childhood finally fall away, and in their place rises a self that is honest, grounded, and not afraid to be seen. As your selfhood strengthens, you begin to form realistic connection, the ability to value imperfect but genuine communion. You stop chasing fantasy bonds and start appreciating relationships built on effort, repair, and mutual growth. You understand that intimacy is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of willingness. You choose the friend who shows up late but consistently over the person who dazzles you for a week, then disappears. You prefer the partner who learns out loud over the one who performs perfection. You stop expecting people to read your mind and begin practicing small, honest conversations that keep the connection real. You allow space for differences because you realize authentic bonds are not seamless. They are shaped, like pottery, through pressure, release, and return. Finally, surviving these thresholds leads you into self-companionship, the deepest relationship you will ever build, the one with yourself. You stop searching for constant external soothing and learn to become your own emotional anchor. You build rituals that steady your nervous system, create inner safety through routine, and learn to sit with your own discomfort without abandoning yourself. You begin hearing your intuition with new clarity, the tightening that signals a no, the warmth that signals a yes, the inner voice that becomes less like a whisper and more like guidance. When you nurture self-trust, you no longer negotiate for crumbs of validation. You offer yourself presence, rest, kindness, and truth. And with that inner bond, you stop fearing solitude because you are no longer alone inside yourself. Together, discernment, authentic selfhood, realistic connection, and self-companionship transform the empath's journey from constant emotional survival into grounded emotional mastery. They allow you to remain open without being unprotected, loving without being depleted, sensitive without being overwhelmed. They turn your empathy from something that once endangered you into something that empowers you, aligning your heart with truth, your energy with wisdom, and your path with a strength that can finally sustain you. In the end, These 3 breaking points aren't meant to destroy you. They're meant to reveal the strength, intuition, and deep inner knowing you were born with. As Carl Jung reminds us, the moments that threaten to shatter the empath are often the very ones that awaken their true power. If today's message from Spiritual Wisdom spoke to your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos filled with deeper insights and transformative wisdom. The 12 hidden stages of spiritual awakening Carl Jung tried to warn us about. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. Every spiritual awakening begins as a quiet whisper within the soul, a call to remember, to shed illusions, and to return to your true essence. In today's video, we'll uncover the 12 hidden stages of spiritual awakening. Carl Jung tried to warn us about stages that reveal how transformation often begins in confusion, but ends in clarity and peace. As you watch, reflect on where you might be in your own awakening. Which stage speaks to your current journey? Comment your insights below, and let's grow together in this community of seekers. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where truth meets transformation. 1. Discontent, the soul's call. Discontent is not a curse. It is the first whisper of the soul urging you to awaken. Beneath every restless thought and quiet ache lies a divine invitation to step beyond the surface of life and into the deeper realm of spirituality. This dissatisfaction does not mean something is wrong with you. It means your inner being is ready to expand beyond what once felt enough. In spiritual awakening, this feeling is sacred. It is the moment your consciousness begins to sense that material success, achievements, and external validation cannot fill the void that calls from within. Rumi's words, "The wound is where the light enters you," capture this beautifully. For the places where you feel most lost are the very gateways through which transformation begins. You start noticing that the life you built no longer fits the person you are becoming. Conversations feel shallow, routines lose color, and desires that once drove you now feel empty. This is not regression. It is the shedding of illusion. The universe often stirs discomfort when it wants to redirect your focus from noise to truth, from performance to purpose. You may find yourself questioning everything. Why am I here? What am I meant to do? These questions, though unsettling, are signs that your spiritual awakening has begun. The human spirit is not meant to stay asleep in comfort. It evolves through contrast. Just as a seed must break open to grow, your discontent is the breaking open of your old self so that light can enter. This process can feel heavy. You might grieve the old dreams that no longer resonate, or feel lost between two worlds, the one you are leaving and the one not yet visible. But in spirituality, every ending conceals a beginning. What feels like disillusionment is actually purification. Your awareness is being cleansed of what is false. The ego resists this, whispering that you are failing or falling apart. Yet beneath that noise, the soul quietly says, "You are awakening." This phase asks for patience, honesty, and deep self-compassion. You are learning to trust your inner guidance more than societal expectations. You begin to seek experiences that nourish rather than distract, silence over stimulation, truth over comfort, simplicity over accumulation. The beauty of spiritual awakening is that even pain becomes purposeful. When you stop running from your dissatisfaction and listen to it, it turns into wisdom. Your heart becomes more open, your perception more refined, and your intuition stronger. You start realizing that what you were chasing was never what you truly needed. Meaning begins to replace ambition. Presence begins to replace performance. This is the alchemy of awakening, the transformation of discontent into direction. And when you finally understand that the ache within you is not punishment, but preparation, the entire energy of your life shifts. You stop fighting your experience and begin cooperating with your evolution. So when restlessness visits, don't suppress it. Observe it. Honor it as a sacred messenger reminding you that your soul is evolving. Every wave of unease is guiding you toward higher awareness, greater authenticity, and deeper peace. The wound becomes the window. The longing becomes the language of the soul. And the discontent you once feared becomes the light that leads you home. Are you feeling the call of your soul? This is where true awakening begins. If you're ready to answer that inner voice and step into your higher path, comment below. I hear the call to begin your journey of spiritual awakening. 2. Questioning and seeking, the inner quest. You begin to ask questions that pierce through the surface of everyday existence. Questions about who you are, why you are here, and what truth really means beyond the noise of the world. This marks the beginning of a deeper phase of spirituality, when your consciousness awakens to something vast and eternal within you. These questions don't arise from mere curiosity, but from an ancient remembrance stirring inside your soul. It's as if lifetimes of inner knowledge begin to resurface, whispering that you are not a product of coincidence, but a being of divine intention. At this point, spiritual development becomes less about chasing goals or proving worth, and more about peeling away the illusions that have kept you disconnected from your essence. You begin to sense that the journey has never been about becoming more. It has always been about remembering who you already are. As you dive deeper, you realize that much of your life has been unconsciously shaped by old patterns, beliefs, and societal conditioning. The mask you've worn to please others begins to dissolve, revealing your authentic self beneath it. This process can feel like both liberation and loss. The version of you built on survival and external approval starts to fall away, leaving you exposed but free. In these moments of internal chaos, Carl Jung's words echo in your mind. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You start to see how your repeated struggles were never punishments, but reflections, each one guiding you to uncover what you had long ignored within yourself. This realization shifts your entire perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" With this awareness, a new sense of clarity arises. The noise of comparison fades, replaced by a quiet strength that comes from self-understanding. You no longer feel the need to compete, because you finally understand that your path is not meant to look like anyone else's. Every experience becomes sacred, every silence meaningful. Spirituality, you discover, isn't about detaching from life. It's about engaging with it through the eyes of awareness. You start finding beauty in ordinary moments, wisdom in pain, and peace in uncertainty. Your heart opens, your intuition sharpens, and your connection to the divine deepens. What once felt random now feels orchestrated. What once felt meaningless now reveals a hidden purpose. Gradually, you begin to trust this inner intelligence, the quiet voice that has always been guiding you. You learn to listen instead of chase, to flow instead of force. This is where true spiritual development unfolds, in surrender, in patience, in faith that everything has its season. The more you align with this inner knowing, the lighter your soul becomes. The need for validation fades because you've tasted the serenity that only authenticity can bring. The lesson embedded in this stage is clear. Evolution isn't about striving to be more. It's about shedding what is false so your true essence can emerge. In questioning, you find clarity. In seeking, you remember. And in the stillness that follows, you finally recognize that every doubt, every challenge, and every heartbreak was simply your soul's way of calling you home to yourself. Comment below. I seek inner truth. If you're ready to look within, question everything you once believed, and begin your journey toward real spiritual wisdom and awakening. 3. Enlightenment, expanding awareness. Enlightenment is not a sudden event, but a gradual unfolding of consciousness, where your awareness expands beyond the limits of the ego and begins to merge with the infinite field of existence. As Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This stage of spiritual awakening is the deepening of perception, where you start to access what mystics call the Akashic records, a vast reservoir of spiritual wisdom that holds the memory of all souls and all lifetimes. You begin to see the interconnectedness of everything, understanding that every moment, thought, and experience is a thread woven perfectly into the fabric of the universe. Nothing happens by chance. Every person you meet, every challenge you face, and every emotion you feel is part of your soul's curriculum, guiding you toward higher awareness. Truth, like the sun and the moon, cannot remain hidden forever. It shines through illusions, revealing itself when you are ready to see, not with your physical eyes, but with the vision of your soul. As your awareness expands, you start to see through the illusions that once defined your sense of reality. The walls between you and life begin to dissolve, and you realize that the external world is merely a reflection of your internal state. You stop chasing happiness outside and begin to cultivate stillness within. Fear and desire lose their grip because you no longer seek validation or control. Instead, you observe life as it unfolds raw, real, and sacred. The light of consciousness exposes your inner shadows, but instead of running from them, you embrace them with compassion. Jung warned that no tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. And in this stage, you understand that enlightenment is not about escaping darkness, but integrating it. Every shadow you face brings you closer to wholeness. Every wound you heal becomes a doorway to divine truth. Gradually, you begin to live in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. Judgment fades into understanding, and resistance transforms into surrender. You start to see the sacred in the ordinary, in the breath, in silence, in the way sunlight touches the earth. Dualities dissolve. Joy and sorrow, gain and loss, light and dark become part of one divine dance. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but instead, "What is this teaching me?" Enlightenment turns suffering into wisdom, chaos into clarity, and isolation into unity. The more you let go of control, the more peace you discover. you start to sense that life is not something happening to you, but something happening through you. A divine flow that moves effortlessly when you stop resisting. This stage teaches that enlightenment is not about becoming special or powerful. It is about becoming transparent enough for the light of consciousness to move through you freely. You no longer seek truth because you become truth itself, radiant, aware, and free. In this expanded awareness, love ceases to be an emotion and becomes your natural state of being. Compassion arises effortlessly because you see yourself in all things. The illusion of separation disappears, replaced by the knowing that everything is one, every star, every breath, every heartbeat connected in the same divine rhythm. Enlightenment, therefore, is not an achievement, but a remembering, a return to your original state of unity with the whole. It is the recognition that the universe has never been outside you. It has always been within. 4. Resistance and inner turmoil, facing the shadow. You reach a point on your path of spirituality when you can no longer escape from yourself, when the silence around you becomes deafening because it forces you to hear your own soul. This stage, known as resistance and inner turmoil, is where the real spiritual awakening begins. Everything you've avoided, your fears, your karmic patterns, your old wounds, comes rushing to the surface. It's as if the universe places a mirror in front of you and whispers, "Now look." The illusions that once protected you begin to crumble, and you start to see the truth beneath them. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This is that moment when fate transforms into awareness, and awareness becomes liberation. The pain you face here is not punishment, but purification. Each memory that resurfaces, each emotion that breaks through, is part of a deeper cleansing that your soul has been waiting for. The shadows you once ran from are no longer external enemies, but hidden fragments of yourself longing to be seen. You begin to realize that the darkness within you is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to reveal you. Healing past and present traumas becomes a sacred act, a ceremony of returning light to the forgotten corners of your being. Spiritual awakening is not about escaping the human experience. It's about descending fully into it, feeling it all, and emerging with wisdom. The more you allow yourself to feel, the more you begin to understand that pain itself carries a divine intelligence. Jung reminded us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The ego resists transformation because it fears death, but the soul understands that this death is the beginning of new life. When you face your fears head-on, you dismantle the illusions that have kept you small. You start to notice patterns that repeat in love, in loss, in your reactions, and you finally understand that they are not curses, but calls for awareness. Every emotional trigger becomes a guide, every confrontation an initiation. Spiritual wisdom teaches that you cannot rise until you have descended, and you cannot truly awaken until you have embraced your shadow. As you move deeper through the resistance, the chaos begins to soften. The storms that once frightened you become cleansing rains. You notice moments of clarity, small but profound, the kind that make you realize you were never broken, only buried beneath layers of pain. The turmoil inside becomes a teacher, revealing truths that no book could ever teach. Your suffering transforms into sacred light, and you begin to see that this process was never about becoming someone new, but remembering who you truly are. Healing is not the absence of darkness, but the integration of it. When you learn to hold both the shadow and the light within you without judgment, that is when your true spiritual awakening begins. It is here, in the heart of resistance, that your soul finally breathes freely. Leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss new insights on awakening and transformation. To affirm your courage in facing your shadow, comment below, "I embrace my inner truth." 5. The abyss. The decision point. You arrive at a sacred turning point in your spiritual development, standing before the abyss, a space that demands a choice between the comfort of what you know and the mystery of what you cannot yet see. This is not a metaphorical cliff to fear, but a divine invitation to step into uncertainty with faith as your only guide. The abyss is where the familiar self begins to dissolve, where all false securities are stripped away so that truth may emerge in its purest form. Carl Jung described this as descending into the unconscious, a necessary journey through darkness to retrieve the hidden light of the soul. In spirituality, this moment signifies the death of illusion and the birth of awareness, the moment when the ego loses its grip and the higher self begins to awaken. The abyss is not cruel. It is transformative. It tests your faith, not by giving you answers, but by teaching you how to trust the silence. When everything around you seems to fall apart, it is not punishment, but purification. Life removes what no longer aligns with your evolution, so you can move forward unburdened. In that stillness, when nothing seems certain, something sacred begins to stir. It is your soul reclaiming its authority, whispering that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move despite it. Each step you take into the unknown reveals more of your hidden strength and shows you that fear was never the barrier, it was the doorway. Most people resist this stage because it feels like losing control. Yet the deeper truth is that control was never real. The abyss teaches you to surrender, to stop clinging to old identities and outdated beliefs that keep you small. It asks you to let go of your dependence on logic and open yourself to the vast intelligence of the unseen. You begin to understand that spiritual growth is not about acquiring more knowledge, but about unlearning everything that is not your essence. What you once called falling apart is in fact your soul rearranging itself into divine order. This is the sacred chaos where transformation begins, where death and rebirth coexist in a single breath. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," and the abyss embodies this truth perfectly. It confronts you with everything unresolved, your fears, your wounds, your attachments, and demands your honesty. But in that confrontation, a miracle unfolds. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes the very force that shapes your awakening. You realize that darkness was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to show you how indestructible you are. When you stop running from the unknown, it stops chasing you and instead begins to guide you. The more you surrender, the more the universe aligns in your favor, leading you not away from yourself, but directly into your highest truth. The abyss is the great equalizer of the soul. It humbles the ego, silences the mind, and expands the heart. It teaches you that spirituality is not a path of comfort, but of courage. Through the abyss, you discover that the unknown is not a void, but a womb pregnant with the next version of you waiting to be born. The greatest wisdom lies not in avoiding the fall, but in trusting that you were meant to fly through it. 6. Rebirth and authenticity, integrating the shadow. After the descent into darkness, a quiet rebirth begins, a moment when the fragments of who you are start to merge into something whole. This is the stage where you integrate both the light and the shadow, and through that union, you find authenticity. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." His words remind you that spiritual wisdom is not about escaping the dark parts of your soul, but about embracing them, understanding that what you've been running from was never your enemy. It was a forgotten part of you, yearning to be seen. When you dare to face the aspects you've suppressed, you begin to see that they hold the keys to your transformation. Every flaw hides a truth. Every fear carries a lesson. Every wound becomes a source of strength. As the light of awareness touches your inner shadows, the resistance begins to dissolve, and compassion takes its place. You stop seeking validation from the outside world, realizing that authenticity is not something you earn, it's something you remember. You begin to live not for appearances, but for alignment, shedding the layers of false identity you once believed were you. This process, which Jung called individuation, is the sacred journey of becoming whole. It's not an easy path. It requires vulnerability, honesty, and the courage to confront everything you once denied. Yet it's through this inner alchemy that peace emerges. You no longer need to hide your imperfections because you finally understand they are the sacred cracks where your light enters and shines through. At this stage, you recognize that being authentic doesn't mean being perfect. It means standing firmly in truth, even when your voice trembles. It means showing love, even when the heart aches. It means forgiving, not because the pain disappears, but because your soul has outgrown resentment. The light that now guides you is no longer external. It radiates from within, from the union of your contradictions. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are," and you finally begin to experience what that means. You understand that the purpose of spiritual awakening is not to transcend the human experience, but to inhabit it fully, to walk in both shadow and light with grace. Through the integration of the shadow, you discover that enlightenment is not a destination, but a deep acceptance of all that you are. The chaos, the calm, the grief, the joy, everything serves a divine purpose. You realize that light without darkness is incomplete, and awakening without struggle is shallow. You begin to honor your pain as your teacher, your fear as your compass, and your rebirth as your reminder that even the darkest night carries the seed of dawn. And in that sacred balance between light and dark, you find the ultimate freedom to live as your truest self, awake, whole, and real. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on integrating your shadow, embracing authenticity, and stepping into your rebirth as a fully awakened soul. 7. Oneness and connection, seeing unity. You begin to see through the veil of separation and realize that everything in existence is connected by one invisible thread of consciousness. What once seemed divided between light and dark, self and other, human and divine, now merges into a single truth that everything flows from the same source. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And in this revelation, you recognize that who you truly are is not a fragment, but the entire ocean expressed as a single wave. You no longer identify solely with the body or the mind. Instead, you sense yourself as a soul moving through human experience, witnessing life through the eyes of spirit. In this stage of spiritual awakening, compassion blooms effortlessly because you no longer see others as separate from yourself. When you look into another's eyes, you see the same divine spark staring back. Their joy becomes your joy, their pain your pain, and this empathy transforms the way you live. The judgments you once carried begin to dissolve, replaced by understanding and love. For you now comprehend that every soul is walking the same path of remembering its own divinity. You stop trying to change others or force outcomes, for you see that all are evolving according to their own sacred timing. This deep sense of connection softens the heart, quiets the ego, and allows you to meet life with patience and grace. Every interaction, no matter how ordinary, becomes sacred. You start to see that the people who cross your path are not random. They are mirrors reflecting your inner world back to you. The universe speaks through them, guiding your growth through relationships, emotions, and synchronicities. Even moments of conflict reveal hidden lessons of love and self-awareness. The more you awaken, the more you realize that forgiveness is not something you give to others. It is a gift you offer yourself when you understand that there was never anything to forgive, only experiences to awaken you. Compassion becomes your natural language, and kindness your instinct. As this realization deepens, your sense of belonging expands beyond human circles into nature, the cosmos, and the entire fabric of creation. You feel the heartbeat of the earth in your own chest and the rhythm of the stars pulsing through your veins. The air you breathe feels alive, infused with spirit, and silence itself becomes a sacred conversation between your soul and the divine. You begin to live as energy aware, flowing, and in harmony with all things. This is not an idea, but a direct experience of unity that changes how you walk through life. The more you surrender to it, the more peace fills your being. In this awareness, you are no longer driven by fear, competition, or control. You move through the world with serenity, guided by intuition and love. Life stops being about survival and becomes a dance of divine participation, where you and existence are co-creators of the same unfolding story. You act with purpose, speak with intention, and radiate presence because you understand that your energy influences everything around you. You realize that the essence of spirituality is not escape, but embodiment to bring heaven into the human realm through awareness, compassion, and grace. Every breath becomes prayer. Every moment becomes meditation, and every choice becomes an act of love. In this state of unity, you live as a spiritual being, having a human experience anchored in the understanding that there was never separation to begin with, only the illusion of forgetting what you truly are. 8. Flowing with life and synchronicities. Trusting the universe. When you enter this stage of spirituality, life begins to unfold like a river flowing effortlessly toward its destination. You no longer feel the need to control the current because you understand that the current itself is divine intelligence guiding you. You start noticing patterns and coincidences that seem too precise to be accidental numbers repeating, a song that plays at just the right time, a stranger who says exactly what you needed to hear. These synchronicities are not random events. They are sacred messages from the universe, reminding you that everything is connected and that your journey is being guided by a higher consciousness. As Carl Jung once said, synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. And the more your awareness expands, the more these signs multiply, confirming that you are aligned with the rhythm of creation. Trust becomes your new foundation. You stop forcing outcomes and begin to allow life to move through you instead of trying to push against it. You start to understand that divine timing is perfect. Things do not happen when you want them to, but when your energy and the universe are in harmony. Each event, even the painful ones, carries meaning. Every delay hides a lesson. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. Through this realization, you begin to feel an unshakable calm within, and knowing that no matter what happens, the universe is working for you, not against you. Fear fades, replaced by faith that life always unfolds in your favor. The more you flow with this energy, the more magnetic your reality becomes. People, opportunities, and experiences begin to appear effortlessly, as if drawn by an invisible force. You no longer chase what you desire. You attract it naturally because you have become aligned with the vibration of ease and grace. You move with purpose, but without struggle, acting when intuition calls and resting when silence feels right. This balance between doing and allowing is the essence of spiritual development. It is where your human will surrenders to divine flow. But this harmony does not come without tests. There will be moments when everything seems uncertain, when plans fall apart, or when silence replaces clarity. Yet these moments are not signs of failure. They are initiations of faith. The universe is not ignoring you. It is inviting you to trust deeper. Each challenge strips away your need for control and strengthens your connection with intuition. You learn to see that even in stillness, you are being guided. Even in confusion, you are being prepared. Life itself becomes your teacher, and every experience, light or dark, becomes a message written by the hand of the divine. When you embrace this flow, you discover that life is not meant to be controlled, but danced with. The more you resist, the more you suffer. The more you trust, the more you thrive. The universe speaks in synchronicities, whispers in intuition, and moves in timing. When you stop fighting and start listening, life responds with grace. You realize that what is meant for you will always find its way, and when it does, it arrives effortlessly, precisely when you are ready to receive it. If you've made it this far, it means you're truly aligned with the message. Comment below, "I trust the universe," to affirm your faith in divine timing, and let the flow of synchronicities guide your path forward. 9. Authentic expression, living your soul's purpose. Authentic expression is the art of living from your soul rather than your mask. It's when your actions, words, and relationships flow in perfect harmony with the truth that lives deep within you. In this stage of spiritual awakening, you stop trying to please the world and start honoring the quiet voice of your higher self. You begin to realize that your purpose was never something to find, it was something to remember. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this becomes the compass that guides your journey. You no longer chase approval or hide behind roles that don't belong to you. Instead, you live as an embodiment of spiritual wisdom, courageously authentic, deeply aware, and aligned with your soul's calling. Every moment becomes sacred when you act in truth, and the world begins to mirror that truth back to you in unexpected ways. Synchronicities multiply, relationships deepen, and the people and experiences that no longer match your frequency quietly fade away, making space for what resonates with your essence. This stage is also where you begin to understand the invisible web of soul contracts that weave through your life. You recognize that every relationship, whether joyous or painful, serves a divine purpose to awaken, to teach, to heal, or to free you. Instead of asking why things happen to you, you begin to ask what they are trying to reveal through you. Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So you start observing your patterns, your wounds, your attachments, and through awareness, you transform them into light. You no longer resist the lessons because you understand that even heartbreak is an act of grace. You learn to meet others not with expectation, but with presence, not to control, but to connect, not to fix, but to understand. As you move deeper into alignment, your definition of success shifts. You stop measuring it by status or validation and start measuring it by peace, authenticity, and purpose. You realize that expressing your soul is the highest form of service, because when you live your truth, you become a living reminder that others can do the same. You start to embody what Carl Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole. The shadow and the light within you are no longer enemies, but partners in growth. You integrate every part of yourself, your fears, your desires, your imperfections, and channel them into wisdom. Through this integration, your presence gains power. People feel safe, seen, and inspired around you, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. Living your soul's purpose is not about grand achievements. It's about alignment with truth in the smallest moments. It's choosing honesty when lies would be easier, compassion when judgment tempts you, and love even when fear tries to lead. This is how authenticity turns ordinary life into a sacred journey. Each time you act in integrity, you strengthen the bridge between your human self and your divine essence. Every word, every decision, every breath becomes an offering to the universe that created you. When you live in this way, life begins to unfold effortlessly around you, not because it becomes easier, but because you have finally become one with it. 10. Elevation of consciousness, higher awareness. Your awareness begins to stretch beyond the physical world, expanding into higher dimensions of being where clarity, peace, and divine order reside. In this state of spiritual awakening, you start to realize that life is not something happening to you, but something responding to your energy. Every thought becomes a vibration, every emotion a signal that echoes into the universe and shapes your reality. You begin to understand that your higher self, the eternal, wise aspect of your soul, has always been guiding you toward this realization. It whispers through intuition, synchronicities, and sudden insights, reminding you that you are not merely a body or a name, but consciousness itself, observing and creating at once. As you awaken to this truth, your relationship with the world changes. You live more deliberately, aware of how your inner state influences every experience around you. You stop reacting from fear and begin responding from wisdom. What once seemed like chaos now appears as divine orchestration, and even pain transforms into a teacher guiding you home to yourself. You no longer rush or resist. Instead, you begin to flow, trusting that each moment carries its own sacred rhythm. This shift in awareness brings a deep sense of harmony. You notice that when you align your thoughts with love and your actions with integrity, life mirrors that frequency back to you. You radiate calmness that others can feel without words, a silent serenity born from the realization that everything unfolds according to a greater plan. At this elevation of consciousness, spirituality is not a theory or belief, it becomes the air you breathe. You begin to see the invisible patterns connecting all things, sensing that every encounter, every challenge, and every act of kindness are threads woven into one vast tapestry of awakening. Your higher self becomes your compass, leading you away from illusion and back into truth. You begin to understand that mastery is not about control, but surrender. Not about knowing more, but remembering who you've always been. The mind quiets, the heart expands, and life becomes a sacred dialogue between your soul and the universe. Living in this higher awareness transforms the simplest moments into gateways of enlightenment. A sunrise feels like a revelation. Silence feels like music, and even solitude feels like communion with the divine. You begin to see through the illusion of separation, realizing that the same light within you burns within all creation. This realization frees you from judgment and fills you with compassion. You live with intention, speak with purpose, and move with grace because you finally understand that energy follows awareness, and awareness creates reality. This is the essence of spiritual awakening that Carl Jung and the mystics before him tried to reveal. That enlightenment is not found outside of you, but in the elevation of your own consciousness. When your awareness expands, you no longer seek meaning, you become it. When you connect to your higher self, you no longer chase peace, you embody it. And when you live in alignment with spiritual wisdom, you no longer look for purpose. You radiate it effortlessly through every breath, every thought, and every act of love. 11. Co-creation with the universe, manifesting reality. When you reach the stage of co-creation with the universe, you awaken to one of the most profound revelations in spirituality, that you are not merely existing, but actively shaping your reality through every thought, emotion, and frequency you emit. You begin to see that the universe isn't an external force acting upon you, but a mirror reflecting your inner world. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth becomes your guiding light as you realize that your inner beliefs and emotional states are constantly creating the experiences that unfold around you. Nothing happens by chance. Every situation, every encounter, every delay carries an energetic signature that aligns with what you project. Once this awareness awakens, you stop waiting for change and start embodying it. Through the lens of spiritual development, you learn that the energy you radiate shapes the reality you experience. Fear attracts limitation, while faith opens infinite possibilities. When you choose to think, feel, and act from a higher frequency of love, gratitude, and purpose, the universe begins to reorganize itself around that vibration. What once seemed impossible starts to unfold effortlessly, not because you forced it, but because your inner state finally resonates with abundance and peace. You realize that the universe communicates through energy, not words, and every moment of alignment becomes an invitation for miracles to occur. Synchronicities appear, opportunities unfold, and people who match your vibration find their way into your life, all because you have shifted from reacting to reality to co-creating it. Co-creation is not about control. It is about harmony. It's about understanding that you are an instrument in a divine orchestra, and your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are the notes you play. When they are in tune with your soul's purpose, life flows with grace. When they are dissonant, chaos reminds you to realign. You start to see that manifestation isn't about demanding what you want, but becoming the energy of what you desire. The universe responds not to your words, but to the vibration behind them. When your intentions are rooted in love rather than fear, your manifestations become pure reflections of divine timing. As your spiritual development deepens, you stop blaming, complaining, or comparing, because you finally understand that everything external is a reflection of your internal state. Gratitude becomes your natural language. You realize that every challenge is not a curse, but a message urging you to refine your energy. Every heartbreak teaches compassion. Every delay teaches surrender. You begin to witness how your inner transformation changes your outer world. As your mind becomes still, peace radiates outward. As your heart opens, love begins to return multiplied. You see that the smallest shifts in awareness create the largest changes in reality. The journey of co-creation reveals that the power to shape your life has always been within you. Your thoughts are not insignificant whispers. They are commands to the universe. When your inner dialogue matches your soul's truth, your outer world transforms accordingly. As within, so without becomes not just a spiritual idea, but a living experience. You no longer chase outcomes. You magnetize them through alignment. The universe doesn't require effort. It requires coherence. When your energy is clean, your faith unwavering, and your heart open, reality bends to meet the vibration of your being. That is the true art of co-creation, the merging of self and source, where spirituality and existence become one continuous expression of divine intention. 12. Unconditional love, compassion, and acceptance, the pinnacle. At the highest stage of spiritual awakening, you become the embodiment of unconditional love, compassion, and deep acceptance. You no longer view yourself or others through the lens of judgment, for you see divinity reflected in every being, every experience, and every breath. This is the moment when the walls of separation crumble, and what remains is unity, pure, boundless, radiant love. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when you reach this point, you realize that who you truly are is love in its purest form. You stop trying to change the world by force and begin to heal it through presence. Your energy becomes calm and magnetic, your heart open and steady, your soul quietly luminous. You see the beauty in pain, the lesson in loss, the perfection within imperfection, and the divine purpose behind every unfolding moment of life. When you live in this awareness, compassion flows naturally from you. It's no longer something you practice. It's who you are. You understand that every soul is walking its own path back to the same light, and this realization dissolves the need to judge or compare. Forgiveness becomes effortless because you can finally see beyond the story of human pain to the truth of divine innocence that lies beneath it. You begin to love without condition, without demand, and without expectation. Love is no longer an act. It becomes your state of being. This is the heart of spiritual wisdom, the space where the mind quiets and the soul takes the lead. You are no longer seeking enlightenment. You are living it through the grace of acceptance and the power of compassion. Carl Jung believed that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal of life. You embody this truth when you no longer strive to be flawless, but instead embrace every shadow as part of your divine wholeness. You understand that light cannot exist without darkness, that peace is not the absence of chaos, but the ability to remain still within it. You walk through the world as a silent healer, lifting others simply through your vibration. People may feel lighter in your presence without understanding why. It's because you have become a vessel of divine energy. You radiate serenity that speaks louder than words, teaching others not through explanation, but through embodiment. In this state, you realize that love is not an emotion that comes and goes. It is the eternal rhythm of the universe itself. You begin to see that every thought of kindness, every gesture of understanding, and every moment of patience sends ripples of healing through collective consciousness. You live no longer for the self, but as the self, the divine essence expressing itself through human form. Every breath you take becomes a prayer, every word a reflection of peace, every action an offering of grace. This is the true meaning of spiritual awakening, not an escape from the world, but a return to it with an open heart and an awakened soul. You are no longer separate from the divine because you finally understand you have always been it. Every stage of spiritual awakening is a sacred invitation to remember who you truly are, not a destination to reach, but a continuous unfolding of consciousness. As Carl Jung reminded us, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Yet through that pain, we evolve into our most authentic selves, guided by spiritual wisdom and inner truth. If this message has touched your soul, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming videos that continue to explore the hidden layers of the human spirit and the path toward awakening.